Ashtyn Campbell here, integration specialist and inclusivity coach, offering all-encompassing coaching for the inclusivity of your unique soulscape. I am here with my wonderful friend, Adam Sanchez. And before I take some time to let Adam introduce himself, I do want to mention that this is actually a second part to a video that we created. So the previous video was called Siphoning, Energetic Targeting, and Alchemizing for Upleveling, which can be found on both mine and Adam's Facebook pages, and also potentially on YouTube. I know it's on my YouTube. So Adam, go ahead and hand it over to you, let you introduce your beautiful self.
Thank you, Ashtyn. So my name is Adam Sanchez. I am what I call an astro yogi. So I teach astrology and yoga as well as personal training, and I'm a vegan chef. I'm like a spiritual entrepreneur. And so, you can get in touch with me through my website, Raw Life Yoga. There's also a YouTube channel of the same name and Instagram. And Ashtyn and I are really delighted to be sharing this second part video with you today about siphoning, targeting, and alchemically transforming that into up-leveling, right? Or how those things can all interconnect. So thank you so much for having me here today on the video, Ashtyn. I'm excited to work with you again.
Yeah, it's always such a pleasure, Adam. So today we're going to be talking about what it is to be in a state of regenerative life force. Also, how to optimize this, really what it is like to be experienced, and why it is important. If you see this little light, it's because of my ring light. It's super annoying, but we'll get over it. Okay, so life force. So think about how people are drawn to a pregnant woman's belly, right? They want to touch it. Ooh. It's because it's of creation. And it is of life force. There's life force energy beaming, such as a baby, right? When we look at a baby, what we're seeing, whether we recognize it consciously or not, is this life force, because babies have just come from the divine and now they're here in the physical. And so they're in this optimal space of life force. And I also want to point out how we reflect that back to the baby, right? So when you look at a baby, unless you're a total psychopath, you're looking at them with loving eyes, right? You're like, oh my gosh, this beautiful, pure being of life and creation. So it's like we're seeing the God and goddess of the baby, the divinity of the baby. And that is really just like an innate intelligence of our own to acknowledge life force. And so, Adam, I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on that, like how you've experienced life force or any relationship that you have there.
Yeah, it's I connect it with the chakra system, or the human energetic system. Some people call it the aura. It's a little bit complex, but it's pretty simple in the sense that it works directly with this life force. And in Chinese medicine, even they call it the qi or the qi. And so it's a real phenomenon. It's ancient in its awareness, or the awareness that humans have had of it. Yet we're coming to maybe a cultural renaissance of recognizing that this is not just a woo concept, but this is actually real and a phenomenon that warrants more study and observation and implementation at the very least.
Absolutely. And it's like that, being open to the experience of life force. And as you come to get to know it, you come to embody it, then you live through it, then you know without a doubt how very real and potent it actually is. What I want to do is I'm going to screen share so that you all can see some images that I came up with this morning. And so what this is that I'm sharing with you now is the sacred figure 8. So this is how I connect to or define life force for myself. This sacred figure 8, and I feel it, I feel it and I experience it in my body, and that being regenerative in its own nature, creating an ecology, right? between different, I want to say it almost could seem as though contrasting concepts, but really when they are placed together as interdependently relating, that's what creates that regenerative nature. So here we have, and I'm just going to kind of name some of them, right? We have the cosmos, and then we have Gaia, which is Mother Earth. The center point of each of these figure eights, because life force in itself is creative, right? It produces creation. That precipice point in the center there is what these two forces and interdependent relating output. So the cosmos and Mother Earth, that output of creation would be heaven on earth. It's actually the embodiment of the cosmos here on earth. Then to name some of the others, we have the masculine and the feminine, which could also be viewed as God and goddess. And when those two are interdependently relating, that creates divine union, that creates divine union within. And truly, as I've experienced it, it's like walking in around and lovemaking with yourself. It's really beautiful and really potent. Then we have the etheric and the physical. So it's like, you know, what's out here in the ethers, and then what's here 3D in the physical, and what can be created there is new to form consciousness. So for example, there can be like wisdoms, right, that seem like outside of yourself. They can be brought into through the body for the purpose of embodiment. Then we also have the head, and we have the body, and the center point there, which aligns with what Adam had mentioned with the chakra system. The heart is the center of the chakra system. So in this figure eight, the heart is turns into this internal compass point. And it's by using and merging the wisdoms of the mind with the wisdom of the body. Then we have doing, which is more of a masculine oriented action nature. And then being, which is more of the feminine, that then produces embodiment. And then there's also wisdom in innocence, and that produces the divine child. So oftentimes when you're on this path, you're not just moving toward greater wisdom, you're actually also moving towards enhanced playfulness. It's a really beautiful place to be. So Adam, would you like to talk about the cosmos and Gaia, and then that precipice point of heaven on earth?
Sorry about that. Actually, I thought you pretty much covered that one. I would like to talk about the divine child as the wisdom, and what was the other part of it? Wisdom and what?
It's wisdom and innocence.
Innocence. Yeah, I think that's a really important one, especially when we're talking about the realization of the self and the true self, which is that part of alchemical transformation, right? It's like removing away the layers of the world and the programming of society to find that inner divine child, or, you know, they talk about it in the spiritual traditions, be ye like children, right? Mm-hmm. So I think there's a great power in unifying those and seeing how those are two sides of the same coin.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah, and as we start to pull back the artifice of the artificial self, we start to get in touch with those authentic inner places of that divinity, and it becomes a natural embodiment of that life force, because that life force is our creativity, it is our true self, and it starts to come out more in our authentic expression of who we are in the world and what we're really here for, right? Our soul's purpose, or, you know, destiny, or whatever you want to call it.
Absolutely. So I oftentimes look at that center point when it comes to just overarching general life force as being our source self, which is then our compass. And when you're talking about coming into your path and your purpose, you know, you're accessing that by insourcing in your internal compass. So now I'm going to go back to just our regular viewing. Okay, so we've now kind of outlined life force and some of its manifestations, and also just its figure, right? Its form. What we're talking about here with these center points is that they're of creation, right? So life force is perpetual creation. So as you come into a state of your own regenerative life force, you start producing. I remember when I first came into my awakening process, and there were these people who I was like, how the F are they getting so much done? How are they producing? It doesn't make sense with the amount of hours in the day, how, someone's writing a book in 2 weeks. Like, what is going on there? And as I've started tapping into and coming to know my own regenerative life force, it is making so much more sense. Um, because you're enlivened and you're with life, and therefore you can create. And when you're merging in this interdependent kind of way, there's just a natural output of production. You also start to, when you're in your life force, you start to really experience the miraculous. And so when I'm talking about how are these people producing so much, it's really the miraculous is occurring. There seems to be almost like less of the walls placed in front of you, and you're just shining through them. You're also very in tune with your path and your purpose, because you're embodying your own regenerative nature. You're tapping into your internal compass. That's where you also start to recognize your own unique signature, and basically like why you are even here on earth. What are you here to do? Who are you here to be? Adam had mentioned this wisdom with a childlike essence. So that's a natural occurrence when you're coming into your life force. And then a really big one is sexuality. Because see, life force is creation, right? And sexual energy is also of creation. So you are essentially aligning yourself with the very vibration of creation. Do you want to tap in and talk about that a little bit more, Adam? There's so much that could be said there.
Yeah, that's a whole school of thought in and of itself, but there's a great power in understanding the basic dynamics of those energies, right? We talk about the sacred masculine and the sacred feminine, and it's not really necessarily to do with gender. It's just about these polar energies like heaven and earth, light and dark, hot and cold, et cetera, et cetera. So when these energies unite, as you mentioned before, they can be interdependent. And when they become interdependent, that is when they become strongest. That's when they feed themselves, right? That's what the divine union is about, right? That synergistic, it's almost like a dynamo or free energy device, right? It's just getting more powerful as it goes along, breaking all the laws of thermodynamics, right? So there is a miracle in that, because we are not relating to it in that way, so we don't really understand it. The miraculous doesn't have to be incomprehensible, but usually it is, and that's why we would call it a miracle, right? It's like we just didn't understand that that was the way things worked, or that there was a possibility there. So in the case of sexuality, human sexuality, and children, that creative life force is present in every step of that process in a different expression. In our own bodies, it's present as the hormones that create the excitement that make us want to connect with the other. And then in the experience of that union, it reflects itself in a different way. And then the manifestation of that union as a child, right? And then that child itself is a whole new palette of creation, right? Children are the most creative. They don't have all those walls that you talked about, because they are embodying that creative essence. They're so close to it. They're so close to that source. So we can ourselves be like children in that sense of staying in touch with or re-accessing those creative energies within us, as also known as the life force, right? It's the same thing. It doesn't matter what you want to call it. In yoga, they would call it the kundalini energy, or it's again the sexual energy, it's the life force energy. So whatever name you want to put on it, the phenomenon is real and it's extremely powerful. And as we start to relate to it and our own essence as powerful, that inner life force, we can undergo what many would call miraculous transformation, right? So what does that look like? What does it have to do with? Well, it has to do with doing the alchemical upleveling, right? Cutting off the siphoning cords of the external world that remove us from that inner source, that, embodied creative energy. And there's a lot of different ways to do that. There's embodiment practices, exercise, meditation, yoga are really excellent ways. I'm a huge fan of sacred sexuality practices. And I think that that's really important in our current day and age, because as much as sexual liberation is important, because we've been programmed with guilt and things like to feel bad about this life force, there is a great power and a responsibility that comes with that power regarding this energy. And as we start to hone and master that power within us, we can really start to consciously access those miracles, right? Because we understand the nature and the mechanism of the miraculous. It's like, actually, it's not coming from out there. It's coming from the internal. When we align with that life force, with our intentions, thoughts, words, and actions, then these miracles can naturally manifest as, we become a part of them.
Beautifully put, Adam. Beautifully put. I love it. Adam was talking about, stopping the siphoning, right? And coming into yourself. So a huge part of tapping into your own life force and containing it is sovereignty. So sovereignty, I would define as like self-governing, self-sourced, so in-sourced, right? Rather than giving your power to something external of you, which would be more of the siphoning and the vampirism, you're in-sourcing through with and around yourself, like in your own torus of sorts. You're moving towards your well-being. You're enacting boundaries that support yourself. This includes energetic boundaries and also means honoring and respecting the sovereignty of others. So as you start navigating and coming into a healthy relating with yourself, and you're acknowledging and understanding the process of sovereignty and each individual being in their own uniqueness, right? And then that also kind of coalesces with free will. There's all these different dynamics there. But as you start to tap into the importance of sovereignty for yourself, you are more likely to honor the process of sovereignty for another. Let's see. I don't know if you have anything to say, Adam.
Well, I think that's really important, because part of the main mechanism of the vampiricism and what I like to call the narcissism, right? The narcissistic system that we find ourselves in so many places in this current day and age is the sovereignty element. Because when you understand that you are a divine being and worthy of that divine connection, that's really important. Then you can start to make those choices that are in line with that divinity, instead of trying to deny it or suppress it or reject it or pretend that it doesn't exist. So actually coming into that sovereignty, allowing yourself that sovereign space, allowing yourself your own divinity, gives other people access to the same thing, because then you're also enabled to allow others that same thing, just as you said, Ashtyn. So there's a great power that comes from that sovereignty. I also like to call it self-love sometimes, right? Because we're, I think, inundated with unworthiness programs from the narcissism that we don't necessarily consciously remember all the time that we are divine creator beings that are fully worthy of love and forgiveness and growth and evolution, spiritually, physically, otherwise. So that when we actually start to access those things, we transform ourself and our relationship to ourself, but that also naturally transforms the environment. And that's when our real spiritual power and leverage comes in, right? Because you can't change anyone else. You can change yourself, and change not in the sense that you're bad or wrong and you need to change, but change in the sense that you actually change the illusion you had of yourself, return to the source of the truth of yourself, and embrace and embody that. Then it creates a freedom that is sovereign, right? You're embodied in yourself, and no one else is going to try and control and manipulate or dominate you, in the sense that you won't allow it, because you know that you're worth that sovereign space, and they don't have that right or ability to compromise that. So it's about actually claiming our spiritual liberation and evolution. And the moment that we claim it for ourselves, we give other people the same freedom and access to do the same for themselves. And then their loved ones and their relations, it's the ripple effect. And it's extremely powerful once we just get it started within.
Yes, it's that claiming your space, staking your claim in your own sovereignty, which means that you are not going to impede upon another's sovereignty, because you're really taking yourself out of the dynamics purely by just understanding what it is to be insourced. That you can be, if you can be your own regenerative wellspring, then the likelihood that you're going to seek outside of yourself to, do some kind of siphoning dynamics, it's not nearly as likely, if at all. We each have our things and we're collapsing them as we go along. But you're recognizing that your power comes from within, and you are less in need of validating from outside of yourself. So that's where the worthiness that Adam was talking about is something that comes into a state of just being collapsed. Because what you recognize is that your sovereignty, your life force, is your birthright. Your worthiness cannot come into question because you are worthy, period. Birthright. And something that I wanted to mention is that sovereignty, and kind of what I'm talking about here, is that it's very counter to control tactics. So, you're saying, I know better than you what you should do for you or how you should be, isn't something that is really going to take place. You're going to kind of those things are going to be alleviated with inside of yourself, because you're recognizing that actually you are your own compass. You are your strongest source. And so to say to another person, I know better for you than you do for yourself, is actually impeding upon another's sovereignty. It's not allowing them to stake their claim in their space, claim of their ownership, tap into their path, their purpose, and be that. So it's offering the spaciousness to others to stake claim in that purely by staking your claim in your own sovereignty. When we have children, parents oftentimes, they will do that. They will say, I know better for you than you do. And what's unfortunate about that along with educational systems, because those are definitely places of where lots of siphoning is going on, is that it's not allowing the child to grow the wisdom of their own compass. And it does attack on, for example, like worthiness and you being able to direct yourself for your own path, your own purpose, your own potential. So many of these systems, which we mentioned in our first video, they intentionally attack those parts of yourself so that you don't come into your sovereignty, so you don't recognize that you're a wellspring, so you don't have access to your own intuitive sensing for yourself, your body, your potential, your path, your purpose. All of these things can come to be attacked by those things, which is counter to the process of coming into your sovereignty, which allows you space to grow in all of what I just mentioned. So we have these dynamics over here, which are almost like attacks to your path, your potential, your purpose, your sovereignty, your life force, your regenerative nature, your empowerment. And then we have what we're talking about in this video, which is being a regenerative wellspring within yourself, tapping into your own individual compass, really getting to know yourself from the inside out, knowing that you are the wellspring, you get to exist in your own beingness, being empowered and coming into your highest alignment, which then will be of perpetual creation and will happen quite naturally.
And it has that figure 8, right? So it's like, they also say that the spiritual journey is not actually a roller coaster, right? The life can feel like a roller coaster sometimes, but that it's a spiral in the sense that, we'll pass through something and it might seem like we're done, but then it seems like we're passing through it again, but it's always different because it's always changing and evolving. So there's a process behind the up leveling as well. Just staying committed to it is enough to essentially assure its success by not being diverged or distracted or siphoned away from that path and that knowing, right? It's like the moment that we believe in and give credence to the siphoning as the only reality or the ultimate reality is the moment we disempower ourselves from embodying that life force. It happens very much on a psychological, mental level, as well as spiritual, emotional. But it's very much connected to our beliefs and our thoughts, which tie up into our feelings about ourselves and each other in the world. So understanding that it can show up in a lot of different ways, and just sticking to that intention or commitment, to your soul's purpose, to whatever words you want to put on it. It's just kind of like on or off switch, right? Am I embodied? Am I on? Or am I disembodied? Or am I off? And just checking in where we are and making it a practice over and over and over again.
Yes. So instead of allowing your energy to leak outside of yourself, if you notice any of that going on, then you're coming back into your center and you're tapping in. And the more you do that, the more natural it becomes. The more healthy boundaries you have that you set in place when it comes to those type of dynamics, the better you get to know your internal compass, and it'll go like it'll alert you when something is off. So you're transitioning really nice into our last piece of this video, Adam, which is how to be in and optimize your life force. You talked about collapsing programs. That's huge. That's huge, huge, huge. So it's also, I name it face your demons, because those demons will be embedded into the programming that keep the dynamics in play that allow for your life force to be siphoned outside of yourself. Or it's basically like signing a contract, whether conscious or unconscious, to give over your own life force. So,
selling your soul to the devil, right?
Right. And so something that I came to do and put into practice regularly is, I would say very powerfully, in my fire, I nullify any and all contracts that do not serve my highest good, whether conscious or unconscious. Like, it's just laying it down. I was talking about really committing, right? And there's a level of devotion in your own rituals and your own practices that can be put into place in order to maintain that commitment. Because it's one thing to understand, right? It's one thing to understand that these dynamics are going on and how life force works. It's another thing to put it into practical application with regularity. And that's how you're going to increase the flow of the figure eight. And when you go to the altar and you devote yourself fully, life shows up for you. So you open yourself to it and it shows itself. Something that's also important here is to care for yourself. So when I say that, it's not to be confused with self-care practices, not to say that those can't help you increase your life force, because they can and do. But when I say caring for yourself, I'm meaning tapping into the place of knowing your worthiness, validating yourself entirely, like literally holding yourself lovingly with like this beautiful, I do this with I use like a divine mother, divine father, energetic figure. So that figure eight kind of happening for me as almost my child self, being nourished by the mother and protected and having a safe space held by the father. And in that, I'm caring for myself. I'm saying, I adore you. I love you so much. You deserve this. And I'm giving it to you. Why I'm saying caring for yourself is because codependency dynamics will say caretake. And when you're constantly give, it doesn't allow you to be in a state of regenerative life force. It's like giving from an empty spring to others. And so coming back to that space of caring for yourself is a very powerful practice in enlivening your life force. I could continue on, but if you want to say anything, Adam, I want to give you space to
Yeah, I
talk.
love that so much that I feel compelled to, because self-love has been the pivotal practice for me on my journey. There's so many different practices I enjoy doing a variety, but that one
All
is,
those
I think,
tools. We collect those tools.
yeah, absolutely. And I love having a variety of tools, because I think sometimes some tools work really well in certain situations and other times other tools work better. But with the self-love piece and the way you put it, caring for yourself, it's good to use different languages and perspectives, because even the term self-love or loving yourself can be far out for people. It's even so far out of their concept of reality, because we aren't necessarily taught this in most cases, that it's like, whoa, what does that even mean? And in actual practice and practicality, I'd like to put it simple terms, compassion for the self, right? Because people hear that term compassion a lot. They kind of have a decent idea of what it is, but very rarely do people ever consider the benefit of having compassion for the self, right? It seems to be externalized in so many ways.
Mm-hmm.
So understanding that, yes, that compassion and care for the self, or understanding that inner worthiness, understanding that we are worthy of that love without the external need for it, that it can actually come from within to within and create a sort of inner figure eight,
Mm-hmm.
is, in my experience, one of the most powerfully transformative things that we humans can do for ourselves as well as for others. Because as we start to love ourselves, again, we talked about this before, it affects the outside holographically. So self-love, caring for the self, if you were to do nothing else but just that, the whole world could change just from
Hugely
that practice.
powerful. Yeah. And I'm so happy that you mentioned how it could be easy for us to have compassion toward another, but then turning it internally seems so foreign. So I just want to mention here, for anyone who's having difficulties with that, begin with the feeling of care for something or someone else outside of yourself. Pull it into your body and into your breath, and then turn it into yourself. So if it's feeling really foreign to do that for yourself, start where you're most comfortable and you're most used to it, and then turn it into yourself internally. And that experience is something that only you can experience for yourself, which is so beautiful. It's so beautiful. It's something that's so sacred that it's only something that you and you can experience for you. So some other ways to increase your life force is to reattach your head to your body, to your heart. So you combined the wisdom of the mind to the wisdom of the body, which has really been, many of us have gone through a process, nearly everyone has gone through a process of becoming disembodied. It was a severing of ancient feminine wisdom that was very intentional. And as you come into a place of not doing, but being, right? As you come into a place of being, you can be in and with your body, and your body will speak its wisdoms, and it has a lot to offer. When you do that, you then have this centered place in your heart where your heart comes alive by merging the wisdoms of both. And that was something that when we shared the sacred figure eights, it was one of the sacred figure eights there. So that is another way to create that regenerative process within yourself. Claim your life force as your birthright. I literally do this every single day in my daily ritual because it is my birthright. I get to glow with all of my life force at my highest potential because it is my birthright. So just claim it as your own. It's the opposite of, I mean, not the opposite, but it's like nullify the contracts, claim your life force as your birthright, along with claiming your own worthiness of being with it. Because when you start to come into this regenerative space of life force and you really start embodying that, it can be really overwhelming. Because see, the thing is we're so used to giving away our power. We're so used to these dynamics that are embedded societally in our ancestry and otherwise, that we actually have less experience of containing our life force, that it can feel highly uncomfortable. I was telling Adam before we started this video that sometimes I run up and down my halls because I have so much, there's all this kundalini, there's all this life force going on, and I don't know what to do. And the thing is it can actually overwhelm you to the point of you dissociating, which means that you're dismembering yourself, you're disembodying yourself. And that doesn't allow for the sacred figure eight to be contained. So when having those type of experiences, it can be really important to just tap into the body. The body will bring you back home. And as you continue on in those practices, your life force can be here in the physical container more and more and more. So it is a process of its own. It's its own type of form of integration. Anything you want to say, Adam?
Oh, sure. Lots of things to say about that. I'm just going to say a couple.
Sure.
You mentioned the ancestry, and I think that's a really important element of all of these phenomenon that we're talking about. And I want to talk about, the embodiment, and blood embodiment is like the physicality of it. It's deeply, profoundly physical, as well as extrasensory and other dimensional. Mm-hmm. So even though there are these forces, whether they be societal or interdimensional, that seek to target our life force and siphon our energy, there are also equal and opposing forces that exist to do the exact opposite. And, you could look into our bloodline and our ancestry, the sacred spirits from our past lives, or, down our genetic lineage, that are actually rooting for us, right? In the spirit world. They're like, yeah, take my, singing ability and take it to, the heal the world, or whatever, right? There's also forces for good that are unseen, and we can also access them as well. So it's a really powerful lesson to remember that everything is interconnected, and as above, so below, as within, so without. Mm-hmm. So as we do the inner work, or make the inner shift, or the inner choice or decision to say, no, I'm not going to siphon my energy. No, I'm going to set up that boundary and understand that that's not where I'm going to go, because I'm calling in the higher forces, my higher self, whatever word, and angels, it doesn't matter what you call it. It's about that internal alignment that is also reflected and supported by the external based on what that internal choice is. So the embodiment not just of our physical, but also of our interdimensional and extra-dimensional self, in the sense that our consciousness is not limited to just the body. We are also the mind, the spirit, the whole cosmos, right? Funneling itself through this current dimensional experience. Mm-hmm. So it's the outward and the inward coming together as one. Mm-hmm. And recognizing that wholeness and that oneness and integration exists is also, at the same time, cutting off the siphoning, cutting off the separation, letting all that go, and claiming that true sovereignty energetically, spiritually, on all levels.
So beautiful. So beautiful. I'm thinking of so many meditations I've had, like doing that, right? The cosmos, and Gaia, the physicality with the etheric, and then merging them all within myself. And that totally fits here with one of the practices that you can do for yourself to increase your life force. Yeah, just so beautifully put, Adam. It was almost getting me teary-eyed, because I'm just like, oh my God, it's so beautiful.
It's a beautiful topic. Thank you for reflecting that back. I appreciate that.
And then also, I really loved how you made the point simply that doing that dissolves those mechanisms that seek to keep you small, seek to keep you siphoned. Amazing. So another thing that could be very helpful, certainly, and has helped me tremendously in my journey in coming into a state of regenerative life force, is shamanism. So there may be siphoning dynamics that are going on, but they're in your blind spots. So you might not pick up on what exactly they are, and they do manifest in the physical, like through, for example, relationships with family or friends or intimate partners. And it's like, why is this just keep coming back around, keep coming back around? And it may be that there's a part of yourself that is trapped in this other space that a high integrity and well knowledged shaman can help you retrieve, to pull back into your field, into your soul's essence. So it's like bringing parts of yourself back home that are missing to bring you back into a state of wholeness. And wholeness is a great word when we're talking about being in a regenerative state of life force, because it's the whole cycle completed. So you're merging yourself back. Then you can also merge that with rituals, right? I have daily rituals that I do, and they have been life-changing. I mean, it can be just a mantra, right? A single sentence, and you do it every day, and it turns into something much bigger than it first appears. And that also goes into what we had mentioned before about commitment and dedication. Vowing yourself, like I vow myself to my body every day because I know how important the body is, and I vow myself to the divine every day because I know that that's really important. All those things can help in keeping your life force contained and clean. I claim ownership of my space. And there's something so, again, profoundly beautiful about these places that we find, like when I was talking about caring for yourself. It's an experience only you have with yourself. Well, that's what's so beautiful about sovereignty, too. That's what's so beautiful about claiming your field, your energetic home, your body. You're the only one who owns this, and that's special and sacred. So really honoring these vessels, energetic and physical, as sacred, and calling yourself back home to them all points in time, and aligning there will greatly affect the figure eight process and coming into a regenerative and natural ecology and way of relating to yourself in the world that will then perpetuate this endless life force and wellspring. So I have this on my head today, so I wanted to mention that. And it's looking a little funky, but that's okay. So one of the practices that I am embarking in now is to cover my hair. And this kind of goes along the same lines of what Adam and I were talking about, just about the importance of the body when it comes to life force. The hair is an antenna to the divine. And I listened, my hair told me I want to be covered, and was very stern about it. And so I followed that practice. And in covering my hair, I had no idea until I did that, because it's all retrospect, right? How much was actually leaking and being siphoned from my hair. So I did my first 24 hours of having my hair covered, and the moment I took my hair down, I was having mass Kundalini activations and just flowing. Well, I mean, with the power that was beyond me, to the point, again, where I was having to be very physical to be able to contain it all. So doing even practices that seem minuscule, they seem very simple, can absolutely add to being with this beautiful regenerative nature of life force. Is there anything you want to add in here? Because I feel like I've been talking for a little bit, Adam.
Yeah, I think we pretty much covered everything for today.
Mm-hmm.
I do want to mention one last thing about the body, and in terms of the work that I do with my clients, and how important it is to be aware of those energetic siphonings related to the body. And we did talk about the sexual energy and life force before. And so one of the strongest practices or longest practices that I found is most powerful, one of the most powerful as a man, is saving the sexual energy in the body and not expending it or spending it, without second thought, because there's a great power that is, in a sense, associated with those energies and those fluids. And so I highly recommend tantric celibacy as a practice for men, especially for women too. I find a lot of women naturally do it, honestly. And that's something that, I'd be happy to guide anyone who has any questions about. I also do spiritual counseling sessions over the phone and Skype. So if you have any more questions, feel free to check out my website. It's rawlifeyoga.com. I know Ashtyn is also offering some really amazing deals and, working with her amazing clients and doing some really soul expanding work. And we're actually planning on doing a video series together in the near future. So I'll let Ashtyn talk more about all of that.
Yeah, so Adam and I are working toward creating a workshop group-like experience, but that would be through an online form that would be about shifting into sacred sexuality, which has so much interconnectedness with this very video and Lifeforce. Also, just as Adam had mentioned, we're trying to get all this information into a video is very challenging. There's a lot, right? So we're giving you just little bits. So please do, if you are interested in anything that we talked about in this video and you feel so inclined, you're resonant or resonating with either me or Adam or both, just contact us because we do both offer individual work. And so if someone's wanting to go a little bit deeper, we're both here to support you in doing so. Yeah.
Perfectly said. Bless you, Ashtyn. Campbell, I love your work and I love what you're doing and bringing to the collective. So you honor me by sharing that with me in this video today. And I really look forward to working with you again in the future. You're a joy and a delight.
I love you so much, Adam. I love you so much. And I also love what we create together. It's really amazing. So more of this is totally in our future.
Absolutely.
Thank you everyone who has taken the time to watch this video. And if you haven't checked out the first one, please take some time to check that out if so interested. Just feel very blessed. So blessed to have this beautiful community that is taking this time to spend with us and the things that we are really passionate about and the things that we're wanting to create and we are creating. So just thank you so much. Feel very blessed to be here with Adam today, to spend this time with him, and then also just share our expertise with the world.
Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. Stay tuned for more great content and the highest good for all.
To the highest.